All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Digital Defenders. We are really excited to see everybody joining us tonight. So make sure that you are saying hi. Tell us where you're joining us from in the chat. We have a really fun night tonight. This is one that I'm particularly excited about because we're talking about fan culture, fandoms, and we're going to be talking about how we tell stories through the interests that we have and through memes. So make sure you're saying hi, telling us where you're coming from in the chat, and also make sure that you are sharing with us what fandoms you're a part of. We want to know what you love. Now, we do have some rules for the road. This part's really important. We don't tolerate trolls in our chat. We are heavy-handed on the ban hammer. So make sure you're being kind to each other in the chat. Don't spam the chat. If you have something to say, we want to hear it. And you can do that without spamming us. If you do spam the chat, we will block your chats. So make sure that you're giving each other room to hear each other's voices. We do have some community norms, so we're going to add those in the chat as well. And let me get those up for everybody. But while we're getting those up, let us know again where you're coming from and tell us what you're a fan of. All right, let's see who we got with us. All right, we got some West Coast. Hey, Seattle and LA. Oh, we got some Vermont. Hello, Vermont and Virginia. Salt Lake City, thanks for joining us. Oh, East Coast, we got Florida too. Missouri, thanks for being here, everyone. All right, Dreamwitz Fangirl Political Com. Excellent. That's a new one that I personally haven't heard of, and I love that we're going to have some real niches here. Fandom can be really niche. Also, fandom can be as huge as sports teams. In our household, we have some pretty big sports fans. There's a cheesehead somewhere behind me in this office. I have my own fandom stuff surrounding me too. So keep telling us what you're a fan of. Now, throughout the night, you will probably have some questions. So you'll be able to put those in the chat as well. We're going to be watching the chat, and at the end of the session, we will be answering as many questions as we can. So make sure, again, put your questions in the chat. And again, since some of you are just joining us, we do want to make sure that everyone's being polite in the chat. We will block and ban if you are not playing nice in the chat. All right, Lord of the Rings. I am a big fan of Lord of the Rings too. We have, some of the OG fandoms up here. Sailor Moon, Yu Yu Hakusho, Buffy and Merlin, excellent. Doctor Who, that's a fandom that goes way back and also is a perpetual favorite. You know what? It's so fun to see all these different fandoms. We got some Swifties. Oh, I've heard of the Wonder Years. That's great. Okay. We got some Trekkies, K-pop, K-dramas. Love it. Have some Potterheads. It is really tricky. It feels tricky to sometimes separate the art from the artist. All right. Oh, dog videos. Of course. I think we are all pretty big fans of dog videos. All right. So make sure you're leaving your questions in the chat throughout the night. Really excited to introduce our topic. So tonight we're talking about fan culture, memes, and storytelling. We're all fans of something, from our favorite shows and book series to sports teams, art forms themselves, artists, and beyond. Fandom shows up in our lives in a lot of different ways. Think of fan merchandise like shirts and figurines. Sometimes even merchandise itself develops its own fandoms like Funko Pops, Legos, and Squishmallows. Personally, I do love a good crossover like Labubu's wearing anime costumes. we're not just talking about it tonight, we are about it here. So fandom also, though, shows up really powerfully as community. And that's why this is so important to talk about tonight. We've all heard of the Beehive, Swifties and Beliebers. And if you're as chronically online as I am, you've seen the way that fan communities band together, fight amongst themselves, revisit their favorite stories, and recontextualize current events through the lens of memes. We're excited to dive into the world of storytelling through fandom and memes. So make sure to keep dropping your questions in the chat and welcome the meme ladies, Dr. Heather Woods and Dr. Leslie Honner.
Hello, friends. We are so excited to be joining you tonight. We first want to extend our gratitude for the Women's March to help us be here with you tonight and to provide this space of community where we can talk about fandom and how it is that we can create stronger digital communication, or more specifically, how to create better memes that support democracy and our movement. So tonight, your educators are myself, Dr. Leslie Ann Honner. I am a researcher of disinformation and community resilience. And in particular, I'm an expert on how visual symbols, like fandom symbols, communicate with an audience. My partner, my collaborator this evening is Dr. Heather Suzanne Woods. Heather, would you be so kind as to share your expertise?
Yes. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for joining us. We're excited to be here to nerd out about fandom. My name is Heather Suzanne Woods. I'm a communication technology expert. My expertise is in digital communities and movements. And with Dr. Honner, we wrote a book about memes and politics. And that's why I think we're known as the meme ladies, which I love. Please keep calling us that.
We are happy to be called the meme ladies. Okay, so tonight we are talking about how fandoms can help us create stronger forms of communication. In previous trainings, which we urge you to go and look at, specifically the May training, we taught you how to make memes. And tonight we're going to teach you sort of an elevated take on meme making. How do you use fandoms, fan imagery, catchphrases, all of the fandom universe in order to create stronger communication? The goal is to remember that social media can be a source of good. We can fight back to defend our digital communities, but we can't do it alone. We need lots of nerds sort of explaining how wonderful their fandoms are and using that rich fandom lore and history in order to draw people into messages that we create for a movement. So before we begin tonight, let's go ahead and check in. Using the chat, tell us what brings you here tonight, what motivates you to join us in this session and in this fight. What motivates you to join us in this session and in this fight? We would love to hear what brings you here tonight.
So I'm seeing some folks talking about the fandoms that they're a part of, and there are some folks who have lots of fandoms that they're a part of. There's some other folks that are fans of democracy.
I love that.
And are interested in moving that forward.
I see people want to create good trouble. Love that. You love memes, working on bumper stickers. Amazing. We're here for that. Yes, I'm also fascinated by how ideas spread throughout culture. Thank you, Nancy. I think that's wonderful. Excellent. We want to make sure we do what we can to stop the creep of fascism. Wonderful. Wonderful. To be more informed, that's great. Hey, Jen, shout out to Jen. Wonderful. Learn how to leverage social media and protect democracy. Great. And that's exactly what we're going to do tonight. We're looking for ways to communicate with people better and to support democracy. That's awesome, Tracy. This is exactly what we hope to do tonight. And we are so excited to join you in this journey. Awesome. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and start digging into our purpose for this evening. The plan for tonight, more generally, is to teach you how to create more powerful memes And explaining the power of fandom in the digital age helps you to access that capacity to create stronger memes. The goal, of course, ultimately is to influence your communities online, but also in real life. So our plan for tonight is a 3-part structure. In part 1, we hope to understand the role of fandoms and meme culture. In part 2, we want to learn how fandoms create better storytelling. And in part 3, we're going to dig into a lot more application so that you get the chance to think about how you can apply fandom to making memes. As we move forward, our main message and in all of these trainings is that your voice matters. And we will say it over and over again. And it's important to say it because it's true. We want you to be empowered to keep yourself safe and to help others. And the only way we do that is collectively enunciating and voicing together. And we want you to know that your voice matters incredibly in this particular time and moment. We also have a takeaway for tonight's lesson, which is that using fandom insights helps create better digital communication. So we know that we're online quite a bit and that we can have fatigue from digital messages, right? They may not cut through the noise of disinformation and other sorts of messages. But when we use fandoms, fandom images and messages allow us to cut through some of that noise and build an emotional resonance with the audience. And part of that goal for tonight then is teaching you the elements of fandom that help compel that emotional resonance. We have several learning outcomes tonight, which we call things that you'll be able to do by the end of tonight's session. We want you to understand what fandoms are and how they shape our belonging. We want you to be able to define key concepts and tools that help fandoms work collectively. Discover how stan culture can help motivate collective efforts, even political movements and messages. And learn how to borrow from fandom cultures to create stronger digital communication. And when we say borrow from fandom cultures, we mean the fandoms in which you are immersed, not other fandoms necessarily, but drawing on your own experience and your own fandom communities in order to create stronger digital communication. With that, we ultimately, of course, want you to learn how to apply your knowledge to help us take back our digital space. And with that, I want us to hand it over to Heather as she talks about part 1, which is what is fandom?
Thanks so much, Dr. Honor. Thank you all for being here tonight. We're going to say it again and again. Just by being here, participating in these conversations, for showing up, being part of a collective, you are really moving the needle and making positive change in your communities, in your space. And I really love what I'm seeing in the chat about folks talking about how digital communication or online communication, online fandom can be an important, and I think somebody said accessible or like low friction way of engaging in political action. And fandom is certainly part of that conversation as well. So if you're just joining us, feel free to drop in the chat any fandoms that you're a part of. And we'd love to hear, again, sports teams, bands or musicians, maybe a sci-fi series, Labubu we've already talked about today. But if you haven't yet, please feel free to share that fandom. It could also be good to find other people in the chat who have a shared fandom, right? At least part of our job is to connect with one another and create collectives. And you're already in a space where there are like-minded people. Imagine what we could do if we found more opportunities to connect. So yeah, go ahead and add anything to the chat that you'd like about who you're really interested in or what fandoms you're a part of, and maybe consider reaching out to others and seeing if there's a space that you all could come back together around a particular fandom. Yeah, love it. So great. So great. So let's go to the next slide, Dr. Honor. We are the meme ladies, so we do want to talk about memes very briefly, but we also want to make sure that we're giving you the most amount of information and tools that are specific to the topic. So I'm going to be very brief here and say that we've covered memes and meme culture for politics, for building movements, or sometimes for dividing groups of people or creating less than helpful democratic practices in other spaces. So if you're interested in having a much longer, much broader conversation, or hearing us talk about memes, or you're just like, I don't really know what a meme is, I don't really know what meme culture is, know that this is actually part of a very long series. We have these Digital Defender series that we've been doing for some time now, and there's an archive of videos where we break things down. So I'm going to be a little quick here, but please do, if you're interested in knowing more, either ask questions in the chat and or go to the YouTube links that are seeing screen on the screen here, or look on Facebook where many of our materials are archived. So cheers. What I do want to share about memes is that memes are an underrated resource for communicating about politics. Dr. Honor and I studied memes in the context of the 2016 election and since then, and our research shows that memes are powerful for building community or for dividing community, in part because they fly under the radar. They oftentimes are effective because they're short and they can be created and recreated over time. And we've shown that memes can be weaponized to move misinformation and disinformation easily without people knowing it. At the same time, memes can help us build communities. And one of the ways that memes are really effective is that they draw on images or objects or stories that already exist to create something new. So you'll see here some examples that we've given, which is kind of an older meme, but it was taking a cartoon frog and turning the president into that, and it shifted the name, the meaning of that cartoon frog. But the folks that knew what that cartoon frog was could immediately understand some of the context or some of the stories that were around that frog. And it was sort of taken over. President Trump sort of leaned into it, took it, and sort of ran with it. And we really believe that here we can build memes that are just as impactful or more. And we want to talk about that. One way that we think that we can enact feminist politics and build the movement is by finding and celebrating connections between memes or digital culture and fandoms. So memes work built by building a shared connection, like inside jokes, or taking something that's seemingly humorous and turning it into something serious. And that is certainly what fandom can do. So on the next slide, we want to answer the question, what is fandom? And fandom has a lot of definitions, but perhaps most simply, it is a group of people, a group of fans who are dedicated, sometimes incredibly dedicated or devoted to a particular thing. And fandom isn't new, right? Think about the Beatles and sort of like the crazed nature of the fans in the audience. Fandom has existed for a very long time. In the digital age, fandom is easier to access and connect because we have different communities and connections that we can come together. So fan culture is simply a group of fans. A fan culture is the culture that happens when a group of fans come together. And oftentimes it's related to a particular, what we would call fan object or a focus of the fandom. But sometimes fan cultures can sort of go off on their own and leave behind or remake what fan culture actually is or what actually the object is. So I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat talking about being committed to Harry Potter, right? Or the Potter fandom more generically. But that's sort of tricky in part because the author has been, let's just say, less than cool to the LGBTQIA plus community. And that's sort of an understatement. And so how do we manage something that for many of us, including myself, I was super invested in the Potter fandom. How do we situate ourselves, or how do we understand ourselves inside of a fandom of something that really means a lot to us, but is maybe not aligned with our politics, right? Or aligned with the way that we think. And sometimes fan cultures will break off and create something new. And I actually think that I'm seeing the Potter fandom do that in a lot of ways. And I don't want to get too in the weeds, but there's a whole sort of, I would say, new narrative being formed, taking Harry Potter and creating something different from the characters that's more aligned with politics, which I think is interesting. So stan culture is sort of the intensification of fan culture. If fandom is simply a group of fans that are dedicated to a particular thing, stan culture is probably the next level up. And stan culture also has several origin stories. Some have suggested that it comes from the Eminem song Stan, which I don't know if any of you know that song. Others have said that it's a merger of two words, stalker and fan, so Stan. But what's interesting is that Stan culture has become more normalized and become something that people claim. So both Dr. Honor and I have we're stans of particular things here. I would call myself an avid Boy Genius fangirl or stan. I'm going to be talking about that here in a minute. So it's become its own scene and its own space. And there are stan wars where different sort of collectives or groups will communicate back and forth, and sometimes will get a little out of hand. And so maybe you wouldn't want to be identified as a stalker, right? Which is maybe part of what stan culture is. But I think people are actually taking on the name stan as sort of a badge of honor for being really committed to something. And so that word, I think, has been reclaimed by various stan communities in an interesting way. I think fandom is not just about people coming together. I think that fandom is a verb. It's an action. Oftentimes it's creative. We're going to talk about the world building capacities of fandom. But if any of you all are familiar with fan fiction, for instance, or have ever read somebody taking maybe Harry Potter fan fiction is a good example of this, taking the core or the narrative structure or even the world of a particular fandom and creating something entirely different. There are massive online archives dedicated to people publishing fan fiction. So they're literally creating something new stories out of what has previously existed. I'd also argue that fandom is a verb because it's a way of doing and being together with other people. So it's sort of almost like an identity that is shared with others. So it's part of like building community. Fandom is also a feeling. Fandom really leans into the emotional or connected nature of community, sort of the idea of building a shared investment in something or someone. So it's a positive feeling that's directed towards something. But I think even more so than that, it is a way to build a community that is shared. Like we have something in common. We're all committed to this thing, and that can take you even further. I would also argue that fandom is a movement. So sometimes that movement is getting people together to do something for the fan object in question, the sports team or the music group or a movie, something or other. And I'll give an example of this. But sometimes fandom can be harnessed to make change outside of the fandom. I think there are some Swifties in here. And I was thinking about the way that Taylor Swift posted an Instagram story about voting in 2023 that listed a nonprofit voter registration link. And something like 30,000 or more new people registered to vote just because she posted that, right? And so the Swiftie collective was just, really invested. They signed up people to vote. And what's interesting is the type of people who signed up to vote. And it was people who hadn't always been represented in the voter rolls, young folks in particular, people that were around the age of 18. And so registering young people can be is an example of how fandom becomes sort of a movement. I'm also thinking about Beyonce, who has just been crushing the latest tour, right? And if you've been able to go to the tour, or you've seen people who have tried to get into the tour, it's like there's something really energetic about it. And Beyonce also lended some of her star power and fandom to performing for the Harris campaign, lending her songs, including Freedom, which became sort of an anthem for that campaign, which is really, really incredible. So fandom becomes a movement in that way. We've talked a little bit about different types of fandoms. I want to say that they run the gamut, right? Sports, recreation, music, Swifties, Boy Genius is my favorite. We'll talk more about that. Various universes. I saw somebody talking about like the Avengers, media and TV shows, material culture and toys like Labubu, but also there are folks that are like fans of public transit. Something that Dr. Honor and I did was we wrote an interesting article about how this meme group called the New Urbanist Memes for Transit-Oriented Teens helped shape Bernie Sanders' following when he was running for president. And it was just this group of people who were interested in public transit, which is super cool, right? And so they were so invested in that they could actually provide a lot of juice and energy through memes about politics for Bernie Sanders. So I want to give you a couple of examples of the fandoms of which I am a part. And if there are any other Boy Genius stands in here, let me know. Boy Genius is the supergroup that is comprised of Lucy Dacus, Phoebe Bridgers, and Julian Baker, all of whom are super awesome sort of songwriters that do a lot of genre bending stuff. They are one of my absolute favorite artists individually, but collectively, it's sort of like you can't get much better as a super group. And what I think is really interesting about them is that what is powerful about Boy Genius is not just their music, which is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I love it. So love it so much so that I've got like a tattoo of one of their lyrics. Like that's how like I physically inscribed some of their lyrics on my body. But that they represent something else, a new way of being in relationship to others. And so I've grabbed a screenshot here of, I think this was a GQ article about how Boy Genius is bigger than the moment, because they were really invested in collaboration rather than competition, friendship, instead of having, a particular, heteronormative partnership as the only way to build community. They also did drag in states where drag was illegal. They did a lot of fundraising for queer communities. Even the name was sort of like a tongue-in-cheek joke about what women or non-cis white dudes could do in the music space. And if you see here, I've also included two screenshots. One is their Instagram page, which has something like 1 million followers. They haven't really been working together because they have sort of individual projects that are out, but they retain that 1 million follower count on Instagram, and they are also spurring spin-off organizations or fan groups like Boy Genius Source, which is like one of the more trusted Boy Genius collectives. And you can see here that they have something like almost 30,000 followers on Instagram. And now follower count is not everything, but it does create a lot of influence. And so this is an example of how it's not just about an individual music collective, but that actually Boy Genius Source has created its own little individual community, and they've done things like fan projects related to the group, and also fundraisers for trans and queer causes, for instance, lately. So that's really cool. That's an example of this. I also wanted to show you an example from the Boy Genius archive of a fan project. And we're going to play a really brief, I think it's like a minute and 30-second video about this, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
So the whole project sort of started like a month ago, and I just started posting it on TikTok, and it kind of blew up. It took a long time, over 16,000 tiny pieces of paper, individual pieces of papers. I was cutting papers up until I left for the concert. So each section had their own specific color. So each paper said, during the performance of Cool About It, hold this paper over your phone's flashlight to create a beautiful rainbow. Once the song started playing, they played that first note.
Wait, what?
Instantly, all the phones went up, all the colors went up, and it created a huge crowd rainbow. It was beautiful and completely overwhelming. And it was kind of amazing because the band was just about to start playing and then looked out into the audience and full on stopped the song to take in the view.
I'm gonna not even ask questions.
The band's reaction was really just the cherry on top of the cake. The band has a huge queer fan base, so I think the concert being set in Pride Month and the fan project being a rainbow did have a lot of a deeper meaning.
So how did she know how many pieces of paper to use? She had to go to a seat map, count all the seats, cut all the paper out, distribute it, and the reaction, as you saw, was magic.
Okay, so a lot of stuff going on there, but I did want to mention how this fan project was a collective project that was taking a concept, which was art, at a Boy Genius concert, and turning it, the stage, which has sort of like a circular part, like I don't know what it's called. I'm not an engineer, but it had a rainbow structure, and turning that into a rainbow as a symbol for sort of a queer collective action. And imagine the logistical work that had to go into place to not only organize it, but to reverse engineer the seat map, to cut out those 16,000 pieces, right? This is an example of how fan projects can mirror or even prepare us for collective action outside of the fandom. Next slide. So one of the things that we wanted to have you take away is that fandoms are like icebergs. And by that, I mean, like memes, we only see the tip or the very sort of like top of a symbolic amount of meaning. There's so many symbols packed in. There's so many ideas packed in. There's so many communities and feelings packed in to a fandom that we only ever really see the very tip, but they can be really deep. And so some of the things that I was sharing about why I think Boy Genius is so interesting is listed here. This is an article that a journalist did after Lucy Dacus's latest album came out, which was pretty recently. And you can see that it's not just about the band, but it's about what they represent for their fans, which is some ideas about identity and hope. And, they free bled, they covered Shania Twain, they made out with one another. The focus was being a new, as they write, a liberating portrayal of friendship with a lesson of liberation more generally. So there's a lot of feeling, community, and identity politics really all embedded in fandoms. So why do we focus on fandom? First of all, fandom is powerful. And I hope that we have indicated many ways that that's the case. But the fact that you've shown up and the fact that you're attached to fandoms and the fact that some of you are not just like in fandoms, but I'm seeing folks have like leadership positions in fandoms, it's powerful. Fandom is also oftentimes decentralized. So it's less that like any one person told that particular person at the Boy Genius concert that they wanted to create a fan project, and still that person helped to create a movement, an artistic movement in a relatively short amount of time using limited information and pieces of paper. So fandom is often decentralized. It brings people together into authentic connection, which so much of politics really needs nowadays. And we like to think that fandoms can draw together different demographics of people based on shared interest. So it's not like we have to be within a particular category. If you are a fan of this thing, you're part of the fandom, right? And we also think that we need coalitions and collaborations to fight fascism. So fandoms can really create a sense of community that can otherwise be lacking on the internet and in person. Fandom focuses people on a shared matter. We've talked about how fandom can mobilize feeling, inspire, and mobilize commitment with deep emotional investment. We talked about how fandom is world building, literally creating art or creating fan fiction. And fandom oftentimes represents more than what it is. It can have a politics or a position. It can advocate for policy change that really helps us keep us sane, sustainable, and in community with one another. And the meme ladies subscribe to Kaba's argument that we do this for the long haul. We do this till we free us. So I also want to share sort of fandom is important because it provides joy and community. And we believe that you should have bread and roses. You should have the things that you need to survive and also things that you need to thrive. And fandom can provide sustainable joy for us. Oh, I got one more slide. I'll be really quick here. And maybe I'll just skip. Well, let's show this one and then I'll skip the next one so that we have enough time for questions. This is cross-reference fandom between Patagonia, who is a drag queen, and Bonnie Wright, who played Ginny Weasley in the HP universe. Go ahead.
My name is Pink and I'm really glad to meet you. You're recommended to me by some people. Hey, ooh, is this illegal? Hey, ooh, it feels illegal.
Okay, so I love this TikTok because it shows so much about the power of memes and the power of fandoms. Having Patagonia, a queen, talking to somebody in the HP universe, Harry Potter universe, is a powerful sort of like wink and a nod in a world in which J.K. Rowling has said some sketchy things about the queer and trans LGBTQIA plus community. And so this is an example of how two sort of collectives or fan groups can come together and really build a message of motivation that can be a force multiplier for movements. Love it. Okay, and then I'll skip this one. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I think we talked about this already. Perfect.
Should I go forward then?
Yes.
Okay. We did this. Okay.
Great.
Let's briefly remember, of course, that we've already talked about stan culture, right? Which elevates fandom to not just you're celebrating the fan object, but can lend itself to cyber stalking, crowd behavior that can be problematic. So as we are using fandom imageries, we want to be careful about how we go about using them. And we want to understand that fandoms can encourage poor thinking and poor behaviors, right? Fandoms can be a race to the bottom in some circumstances. So while we engage with fandoms, we want to make sure that we're not holding our fandoms too preciously, right? We want to be able to say, hey, I know there are problematic aspects of this fandom so that we can critique the fandom and then be able to mobilize different political messages. Heather's already talked about how Harry Potter stans are trying to shift the Harry Potter universe away from J.K. Rowling's vision of the world in order to have inclusion and belonging in a more general sense for Harry Potter stans. And so as we think about fandoms, remember that there can be a dark side to fandom and crowd behavior can become dicey. So we be careful with how we're going about using the fandom. Okay, so checking in, what most attracts you to your fandom? Is there a particular character or player you love? Is it the story? What pulls you in emotionally to your fandom? Okay. Any other reasons? What motivates you? For me, I love Labubu because it's cute, and I love horror films because my parents banned me from watching them as a child, and now I view it as a triumph to, enjoy the blood and gore of horror films. So for me, it's the transgression that makes me feel connected to that fandom. I think Heather's already pointed out how Boy Genius really helps sort of voice the way she thinks about the world, so much so that she's tattooed it on her body, right? Right. Excellent. You do enjoy the characters and the story. That's awesome. Wonderful. Well, keep feeling free to answer that question, because what we know is that when we're engaged with fandoms have a deep emotional resonance. And that emotional resonance comes from one of two places. One, how the story is told, or two, how we identify with the characters. And so it would seem really natural to us to be attracted to certain kinds of fandoms because we feel that they speak for us in particular ways. But the true power of fandom is in the way that fandoms allow us to tell stories and to connect with one another. So we're running a little low on time, so I'm going to move a little bit more quickly here so that we have plenty of time for questions. But I see you talking about the subversiveness of some of the places, the way the characters are written. This is all in keeping with what the research says and how we go about using fandom and our messages. Okay. So let's keep going here. One of the ways that we want to talk about using fandom is not just that you are a member of a fandom, but that fandom is a political strategy. And that may seem counterintuitive, but we know from broader research that fandom is key to a strategy that's trying to deal with the politics of the present moment. In particular, I want to shout out one of our friends and colleagues, Ashley Hink. She has a phenomenal book called Politics for the Love of Fandom. And in that book, she argues that there is such a thing as fan-based citizenship, and that within that, fandom and fan culture are a strategy for certain kinds of messaging, political or otherwise. She argues that fandom is a mode of citizenship and affiliation. She argues that public engagement emerges from commitment to a fan object. So she talks about Harry Potter, she talks about Nebraska football, and these all are ways that we connect to a fandom and that can orient our politics. And so we as members of the fandom are trying to create messages with that fandom that back up beliefs or ideals that we hold to be true, not just whatever the fandom is saying at this particular moment. Let's go ahead and look at some examples of politicians who use fandom super effectively. So the first one is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who during the lead up to the 2024 election would get on Twitch and play Madden with Tim Walz in order to introduce him to the American public. So far we've talked about a lot of different things that fandom does. It's world building, it helps connect people. Using the chat, how do you think fandom is being used in this example of AOC playing Madden with Tim Walz? Is it A, connecting gamers to the upcoming election, B, meeting voters where they are, C, showing the normalcy of politicians, D, creating a fan culture around AOC and Walz, or E, all of the above? Or is it A, connecting things? Excellent. Caitlin's already got it. It's the E. Excellent. Right. So what we know about fandoms is that they connect the audience to the present moment or to the issue that's being addressed. Fandom also meets people where they are, right? This isn't AOC giving a speech on the steps of a Capitol building, right? This is her connecting to viewers and audiences, constituents, where they are in the world. It also shows her to be a normal person, right? She's somebody who loves to game. She can play Madden. She's not just playing other kinds of games. And it also helps create a fan culture specifically around AOC and Tim Walz as politicians. Great job, y'all. I love the way you're answering this. You all get that what fandom does is to build in all of these aspects of authenticity, of connection, and of community. Wonderful. All right, we're going to skip past this next one so that we have more time. What we can learn from how someone like AOC or even Zohran Mamdani is using fandom, what they're doing is listening to and respecting populations, right? In particular, underserved and underrepresented populations, because they're connecting to them in the fandom space where they might have a lesser voice, but what the connection does is allow that voice to feel stronger. They're speaking to audiences or fans in a way that they prefer, right? Using fan language is often much more interesting than simply talking in a sort of regular dialect. They're mobilizing cultural context, right? They're not suggesting that digital culture is separate from politics. Instead, they're making the claim that digital politics and regular politics are one and the same, that fandoms is where we do politics. They're leaning into their humanity and inviting an authentic connection. And they're speaking outside of institutions in order to change them, meaning they're showing us that they're willing to break the mold of political communication in order to change how we relate to one another. And so using fandom is a different way of telling the story of political messaging. It's a different way of saying how we connect to others and how we use fan imagery. So how do we use fandoms? One, we always want to engage in our fandoms responsibly, remembering that crowd behavior and stan culture can be dangerous. We want to create digital messages that lean on the power of fandoms, and that includes using symbols from the fandom, employing language or catchphrases from the fandom, talking to the fandom as a collective, as an us, sharing messages both inside fan networks, like particular communities where fans gather, like the Instagram Boy Genius fans, as well as in mainstream networks. So don't just talk to fans who are already in those Instagram or specific channels of fandom, but also those who might be more casual fans more broadly. And then ultimately, when you use fandoms, try to stay at about the surface level or just below that, because you don't want to go too deep in the lore or you won't be able to connect to as many people. Though there can be times when you want to use that lore to speak to a more deeply invested group. All right, last time we talked about how to make memes. We've already posted the link in the chat about what we went through. What I want to point to today is that there are meme generators that will have a series of images included in them. So you can go to IMG Flip, iloveimg.com, makeameme.org, or Canva, and you can look up fan-based imagery. We've done that for you for this training so we can walk through a couple of examples. So what I've done is I found this lovely Labubu who has a fantastic t-shirt. And based on our fandoms, we want to come up with a way to turn this into a meme. So what should our meme say if our image is a Labubu with the shirt, abolish ICE? Should it be A, the only Labubu I want? B, my Labubu is ready to catch these fists? C, even my Labubu is anti-fash? D, Labubu says fuck ICE? Or E, write your own? What could we use to make a meme out of this Labubu to shame ICE for what is happening? Is there anything we could use? Any of these catchphrases? All right, Michelle, I see you would do E, write your own. What would you put if y'all are going to write your own? I think I would start with C, even my Labubu is anti-fash personally, but I don't know. Fuck ice is very tempting. C, love it. Thank you. Awesome. Even my Labubu is anti-fash. Great. All right, so what you're seeing here is I'm taking an image. This is a t-shirt that's available for your Labubu on Etsy if you need it. I'm taking this image from Etsy. I would upload it to one of those meme generation sites, and then I would include a caption that allows me to both speak to the fandom, to connect with that fandom, and to show the way that we are affiliated, but also to give them something funny, as well as thinking about the horrors of ice in this present moment. Right. Excellent. This is wonderful. You all are doing so great. I love your captions. Labubu doesn't need a mask. Would ice beat me for being an immigrant? That's a very good question. Love it. You can be cute and still give a shit. That's awesome. Come get me ice. That's funny too. I love it. Y'all are so good at this. This is awesome. Wonderful. Okay, now we have one more meme that I want you to caption, and this is a very recent one from Friday. So this is combining not just toy and material culture, but more broader fandoms. All right, so we all know what happened at the Coldplay concert, that two cheaters were caught hanging out together. Then on Friday, Gavin Newsom shared this particular meme of Donald Trump embracing Jeffrey Epstein, and his caption was, "Lights will guide you home unless you're on the flight log." I don't know if that's the best caption. Maybe we could come up with a better caption. We could say A, when the felon in chief needs a night out. B, enigmas never age. C, flight log besties. D, evil BFFs. Or E, write your own. So what would you put on this particular meme? I love my import. Excellent. C, and flight log besties. Excellent. Your secret's safe with me. I love that. That's awesome. Fight for it, Newsom. Yes, exactly. All right. E, keep the secret. Love that. Right. So we're trying to draw attention to the ways that Trump has lied about his past behavior and his deep relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Great. Love it. Madden is a video game, KO. It's a video game where you play football. All right. Even kings need love. A, when the felon in chief needs a night out. E, exposed. Going deep in the music. All right. So you all are getting this, right? That you're brilliant already. That what we're trying to do is take a fan imagery, something that's fun, that's enjoyable, and connect it to the messages that we want to share. And what that allows us to do is to spread our message farther and to be able to connect with people on a deeper level and perhaps move around the kind of noise that they might be experiencing in a number of different locations. Y'all are so brilliant. I love it. Wonderful. Okay. So what we're trying to do is to create memes that have emotional resonance, that connect to the stories that fandoms tell, and that support our identity in this moment and in the movement. As a caution, remember, don't get too far into the fervor of fandom. Try not to become too much of a fanatic. And then, of course, be curious about other fandoms and fan cultures, right? So we might dismiss other fan cultures. Heather and I were talking before this, and she's like, I don't get the Labubu thing, but I'm into the Labubu thing. And so we are now curious about each other's fandoms as a way to connect to broader imagery. All right. As we finish out our session tonight, we want you to remember two things. You have power in this fight, and we want you to be creative in the meme process. We do have a few minutes, and we would be delighted to answer some questions. But if you don't want to stay, before you leave, be sure to drop in the chat what is one thing you learned about fandom. But we're going to hold for questions for now.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This was so informative and so fun. The chat has been popping off. I've seen some real expertise among our friends here in the chat. Thank you all in the chat for being so generous of spirit and with your knowledge. Thank you, Dr. Woods and Dr. Hunter, for your wisdom and for always being ready and willing to educate and bring us along in a really fun way. So we do have a question. If I use random memes that I found in various areas, are there laws like copyrights or licensing issues that I need to know about? Can I legally use anything on the net to tell my stories?
So for the most part, memes are outside of copyright. And that means that because they blend images from different areas, they can't be copyrighted in the same way. And that means that everyday users of the internet usually have carte blanche to use that kind of imagery. Now, if a corporation or a celebrity use these kinds of memes, there might be copyright liability there. But for most of you, you can use these kinds of fandom images so long as you're not making a profit off of that image. And that usually protects you quite a lot.
A couple of additional things I want to share. Meme making can be a good opportunity to reference other people who have created something. So if there's like original art and you want to support the artist, you can always link the artist or like reference or shout out the artist. You want to be careful to, depending on where you're trying to publish this meme, making sure that you're within the bounds of the like terms of service of a particular social media site. But know that, for instance, on TikTok, there are built-in structures to sort of help you make memes. And so following those terms of service and sort of making sure that you note when something is original art that you want to like highlight the creator of, while also being thoughtful about those ideas and what you're doing with them are going to be important. We will say, if you're trying to like, again, publish like in a book or make money off of that, you might want to consult legal counsel, but that doesn't seem like what's happening here.
Some of you asked for meme making apps. We posted some of those earlier, but literally I would just Google meme generator and you'll find hundreds of sites that you can use. There's not a favorite, and there's lots of different options that you can use.
Now, back in the copyright realm, we did see questions earlier about fanfic and whether some authors will come after fanfic authors. Can y'all talk a little bit about that?
I will say some of the same advice that we have is here. Like, I know, for instance, there is some Harry Potter fanfic, some slash fic. I think it was slash fic, maybe. A Draco Hermione story got really popular. They published it, and then it got taken down, I think probably for copyright violations. And so you want to proceed with caution in some of those places. And some people are going to be more litigious than others. There are guides online for people who are producing fanfic that are about this topic in particular. And it also sounds like there's some people in the collective today who maybe got some experience, which could be cool to reach out to those folks.
Lots of expertise in the chat. So because we are short on time, I want to thank everybody for your generous questions. We do want to remind everyone that links and resources will be sent. We know that we have some people asking for a list of meme generators, so we will make sure to include those in the email that went out to everybody who has RSVP'd for tonight. Additionally, if you are here tonight, we want to ask you a special favor because we want to know more about your fandoms. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat, and we hope that you will sign up to receive this survey about where you live online. So make sure that you sign up there. We'll also send that out in the email following up. So thank you again to everybody who came out. Thank you, Dr. Woods and Dr. Honor, for being so generous with your time and your expertise. And thank you all for coming and joining us tonight. We are so excited to continue learning with you and offering some more information. So make sure to check your inboxes for our next session in August. Thanks again. Have a good night.